Hey guys, if you truly want to master that Photoshop brush, you need to understand the difference between opacity and flow when you are using it. So please enjoy this small segment of my Skillshare class, Dodge and Burn Like a Pro, which is linked below this video, which will give you an inside look on how I change and alter the light in almost every image that I process. Hope you enjoy it. All right, so at 100% opacity, if I click on it, I get a similar result as to what I had before, okay? And if I go back and forth, again, similar to what I had before. However, if I change the flow down to, say, 50%, flow works a little bit differently. Instead of picking up my finger and clicking on the mouse again and again and again to create a cumulative effect as you do with opacity, with flow, you press once and you just keep moving the mouse back and forth. So one press, and if I go over and over and over the same area, it gets darker. Now, if I change the flow to, say, 10%, it's going to take me longer, more back and forth to get to this same amount of opacity. So I'm going to press, and then I'll go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you can see how it takes longer, but you can also create more kind of gradual transitions from the very dark to the very light. Now, if I bring the opacity down to, say, 50%, no matter how many times I go back and forth with flow, I won't be able to get more than 50% of this white kind of removed. So I'm going to click and drag back and forth and back and forth. And I'm just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And I never get beyond 50% opacity. And it's because I've set that limit with the opacity of the brush. Now, if I pick up my finger and I click again, then I can create more of a cumulative effect. I know that that is a little bit confusing between flow and opacity. I just wanted to kind of help you understand that. So if I bring the opacity way, way down, I won't ever, no matter how many times I'll go back and forth, I'll never get beyond 16%. So if you want kind of the ultimate of control, I would bring the opacity, up kind of high, maybe even 100%, but keep the flow really low so that if I click and drag around, you can see where I run over the same area multiple times, that area gets darker and the surrounding areas get lighter. This is a really, really good method of, painting in Photoshop if you've got some sort of like Wacom tablet or something like that in order to make these transitions really soft and smooth. So with the opacity set at 100%, I was able to get 100% darkness in the middle that I had gone over again and again and again. Even though the flow was down to 10%, it just took me longer to get there, and the transition is a little bit smoother. So experiment with that. Definitely do it on a blank slate. I just created a new file. I said File, New, and I selected my background contents as white. And it really doesn't matter how big you make this, but it just gives you this opportunity to practice with that. Okay, so let's close that. And I definitely don't want to save it. So I'm going to leave the opacity at 100% and the flow at 10%. And this image, instead of changing the opacity and going tap, 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 tap with my mouse trackpad, I am going to go back and forth with the flow. So first things first, I have to create that dodge and burn layer, because if I just paint with plain old white, I get white. I don't actually get through that overlay layer that we need to create. So I'm going to click on Actions, and I'm going to click on Dodge and Burn Layer like I showed you how to do earlier. Click Play, and we are good to go. So now I've got my flow at 10%. So I'm going to brighten the water a little bit. I'm going to kind of go back and forth. And I'm just holding my finger down and just coming through here and making these changes. Anything that I want to be a little bit brighter, I'm kind of going back and forth a couple of times. And I can lift my finger and then start again over here. I'm just trying to brighten my greens up a little bit, just in certain areas. What I want to do is I want to draw the eye from the bottom right to the top left of this image. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time brightening greens up in this area because it would be very easy in something like Lightroom to just grab the green hue and luminance in the HSL slider and just brighten green, but it does it everywhere. I want to dodge and burn selectively. So I'm kind of creating this trail of light from the bottom right to the top left. And I'm going to hit the X key so that I'm now painting with black, and I'm going to darken these rocks down a little bit. Again, it's 10%, but if I go too much, you can see how you can just way overdo it. So maybe a bigger brush will give me a softer transition here and just a couple of swipes. I don't have to go crazy there. And I might darken this whole area down in here a little bit and down in here again, trying to create that light going through the image here to bring attention to my subject. And this is a little bit bright here up in the top left corner, so I'm actually going to run over that a little bit with the darkening. And I did too much. So if I find that I'm having a little trouble, that I'm kind of overkilling it a little bit, I might actually bring the opacity down a little bit just to make sure that I don't do too much. There we go. Maybe darken that a little bit, darken this a little bit. I might actually just crop that out later, we'll see. Okay, so let's do a little before and after. So here's before and after. You can see how I've created a trail of light. It's not straight. I didn't just make it super obvious. It was very subtle, but very effective. So here's before and after. You can see how I've shifted the light in this image. I didn't do any fancy editing, no fancy layer work, not merging different images. This is just simple, straight up, old-fashioned dodging and burning on the computer. So much easier than it used to be. So I hope that example helped a little bit in understanding the difference between using opacity and flow with the dodge and burn layer. Okay, see you in the next video.